Letter 21. The Leisure of the Soul. One of the joys of being here is the leisure for dreaming and for getting acquainted with oneself. Of course, there is plenty to do, but though I intend to go back to the world in a few years, I feel that there is time to get acquainted with myself. I tried to do that on Earth, more or less, but here there are fewer demands on me. The mere labor of dressing and undressing is lighter, and I do not have to earn my living now, nor anybody else's. You too could take time to loaf, if you thought you could. You can do practically anything you think you can do. I purpose, for instance, in a few years, not only to pick up a general knowledge of the conditions of this four-dimensional world, but to go back over my other lives and assimilate what I learned in them. I want to make a synthesis of the complete experiences of my ego, up to this date, and to judge from that synthesis what I can do in the future with least resistance. I believe, but am not quite sure, that I can bring back much of this knowledge with me when I am born again. I shall try to tell you, or some of you, when and about where, to look for me again. Oh, don't be startled. It will not be for some time yet. An early date would necessitate hurry, and I do not wish to hurry. I could probably force the coming back, but that would be unwise, for I should then come back with less power than I want. Action and reaction being opposite and equal, and the unit or ego being able to generate only so much energy in a given time. It is better for me to rest in this condition of light matter, until I have accumulated energy enough to come back with power. I shall not do, however, as many souls do. They stay out here until they are as tired of this world as they formerly were tired of the earth, and then are driven back, half unconsciously, by the irresistible force of the tide of rhythm. I want to guide that rhythm. Since I have been here, one man, whom I know, has gone back to the earth. He was about ready to go when I first found him. The strange part of it was that he himself did not understand his condition. He complained of being tired of things and of wanting to rest much. That was probably a natural instinct for rest, in preparation for the supreme effort of opening the doors of matter again. It is easy to come out here, but it requires some effort to go from this world into yours. I know where that soul is now, for the teacher told me. I had spoken to the teacher about him, but he already knew of his existence. It was rather strange, for the man was one in whom I should have fancied that the teacher would have taken little interest. But one never knows. Perhaps in his next life he may really begin to study the philosophy which they teach. But I was speaking of the larger leisure out here. I wish you could arrange your life so as to have a little more leisure. I do not want you to be lazy, but the passive conditions of the mind are quite as valuable as the active conditions. It is when you are passive that we can reach you. When your mind and body are always occupied, it is difficult to impress you with any message of the soul. Find a little more time each day for doing nothing at all. It is good to do nothing sometimes. Then the semi-conscious parts of your mind can work. They can remind you that there is an inner life. For the inner life that is capable to you on earth is really the point of contact with the world in which we live. I have said that the two worlds touch, and they touch through the inner. You go in to come out. It is a paradox, and paradoxes conceal great truths. Contradictions are not truths, but a paradox is not a contradiction. There is a great difference in the length of time that people stay out here. You talk of being homesick. There are souls here who are homesick for the earth. They sometimes go back almost at once, which is generally a mistake. Unless one is young and still has a store of unused energy saved over from the last life. In going back to the earth too soon, one lacks the force of a strong rebound. It is strange to see a man here, as homesick for the earth as certain poets and dreamers on earth are homesick for the inner life. This use of the terms outer and inner may seem confusing, but you must remember that while you go in to come to us, we go out to come to you. In our normal state here, we are living almost a subjective life. We become more and more objective as we touch your world. You become more and more subjective as you touch our world. If you only knew it, you could come to us at almost any time for a brief visit. I mean, by going deep enough into yourself. If you want to try the experiment and will not be afraid, I can take you out here, without your quite losing consciousness in your body. I mean, without your being in deep sleep. You can call me when you want to make a trial. If I do not come at once, do not be discouraged. Of course, at the moment I might be doing something else, but in that case I will come at another time. There is no hurry. That is what I want to impress upon you. What you do not do this year, you can perhaps do next year. But if you are always rushing after things, you can accomplish little in this particular work. Eternity is long enough for the full development of the ego of man. Eternity seems to have been designed for that end. That was a sound statement which was given at one time. The object of life is life. I have realized that more fully, since I had an opportunity to study eternity from a new angle. This is a very good angle, from which to view both time and eternity. I see now, what I did not see before, that I, myself, have never wasted any time. Even my failures were a valuable part of my experience. We lose to gain again. We go in and out of power sometimes as we go in and out of life, to learn what is there and outside. In this, as in all things, the object of life is life. Do not hurry. A man may grow gradually into power and knowledge, or he may take them by force. Will is free, but the gradual growth has a less powerful reaction. Letter 22. The Serpent of Eternity. I want to talk to you tonight about eternity. Until I came out, I never had a grasp on that problem. I thought only in terms of months and years and centuries. Now I see the full sweep of the circle. The comings out and the goings into matter are no more than the systole and the diastole of the ego heart. And, speaking from the standpoint of eternity, they are relatively as brief. To you, a lifetime is a long time. It used to seem so to me, but it does not seem so now. People are always saying, if I had my life to live over, I would do so and so. Now, no man has any particular life to live over, any more than the heart can go back and beat over again, the beat of the second previous. But every man has his next life to prepare for. Suppose you have made a botch of your existence. Most men have, viewed from the standpoint of their highest ideal. But every man who can think must have assimilated some experience, which he can carry over with him. He may not, on coming out into the sunlight of another life on earth, be able to remember the details of his former experience, though some men can recall them by a sufficient training and a fixed will. But the tendencies of any given life, the unexplained impulses and desires, are in nearly all cases brought over. You should get away from the mental habit of regarding your present life as the only one. Get rid of the idea that the life you expect to lead on this side, after your death, is to be an endless existence in one state. You could no more endure such an endless existence in the subtle matter of the inner world than you could endure to live forever in the gross matter in which you are now encased. You would weary of it. You could not support it. Do get this idea of rhythm into your brain. All beings are subject to the law of rhythm, even the gods, though in a greater way than ourselves, with longer periods of flux and reflux. I did not want to leave the earth. I fought against it until the last. But now I see that my coming out was inevitable, because of the conditions. Had I begun earlier, I might have provisioned my craft for a longer cruise. But when the coal and water had run out, I had to make port. It is possible to provision even a small life craft for a longer voyage than the allotted 80 years and 10. But one must economize the coal and not waste the water. There are some who will understand that water is the fluid of life. Many persons resent the idea that the life after death is not eternal, a never-ending progression in spiritual realms. Though few who so object have much of an idea what they mean when they talk of spiritual realms. Life everlasting is possible to all souls, yes, but it is not possible to go on forever in one direction. Evolution is a curve. Eternity is a circle, a serpent that swallows its own tail. Until you are willing to go in and out of dense matter, you will never learn to transcend matter. There are those who can stay in or out at will, and, relatively speaking, as long as they choose. But they are never those who shrink from either form of life. I used to shrink from what I called death. There are those on this side who shrink from what they call death. Do you know what they call death? It is rebirth into the world. Yes, even so. There are many here who are as ignorant of rhythm as most people are on your side. I have met men and women who did not even know that they would go back to the earth again, who talked of the great change as the men of earth talk of dying, and of all that lay beyond as unproved and unprovable. It would be tragic if it were not so absurd. When I knew that I had to die, I determined to carry with me memory, philosophy, and reason. Now I want to say something which will perhaps surprise you. There is a man who wrote a book called The Law of Psychic Phenomena. And in that book he said certain things of those two parts of the mind, which he called the subjective and the objective. He said that the subjective mind was incapable of inductive reasoning, that the subjective mind would accept any premise given it by the objective mind, and would reason from that premise with matchless logic, but that it could not go behind the premise, that it could not reason backwards. Now remember that in this form of matter where I am, men are living principally a subjective life, as men on earth live principally an objective life. These people here, being in the subjective, reason from the premises already given them, during their objective or earth existence. That is why most of those who last lived in the so-called Western lands, where the idea of rhythm or rebirth is unpopular, came out here with the fixed idea that they would not go back into earth life. Hence, most of them still reason from that premise. Do you not understand that what you believe you are going to be out here is largely determinative of what you will be? Those who do not believe in rebirth cannot forever escape the rhythm of rebirth. But they hold to their belief until the tide of rhythm sweeps them along with it and forces them into gross matter again, into which they go quite unprepared, carrying with them almost no memory of their life out here. They carried out here the memory of the earth life because they expected so to carry it. Yes, when I realized that I had to leave the earth, I laid a spell upon myself. I determined to remember through both the going out and the subsequent coming in. Of course, I cannot swear now to remember everything when I come into heavy matter again, but I am determined to do so if possible. And I shall succeed to some extent if I do not get the wrong mother. I intend to take great care on that point, and to choose a mother who is familiar with the idea of rebirth. If possible, I want to choose a mother who actually knew me in my last life, as Mr., and who, if I shall announce in childhood that I am that same Mr. whom she knew when a young girl, will not chide me and drive me back into myself with her doubts. I believe that many children carry over, into earth life, memories of their lives out here, but that those memories are afterwards lost by reason of the suggestion constantly given to children that they are newly created, fresh from the hand of God, etc., etc. Eternity is indeed long, and there are more things on earth and heaven than are dreamed of in the philosophy of the average teacher of children. If you could only get hold of the idea of immortal life and cling to it, if you could realize yourself as being without beginning and without end, then you might commence to do things worthwhile. It is a wonderful consciousness, that consciousness of eternity. Small troubles seem indeed small to him who thinks of himself in the terms of 1,000,000 years. You may make the figure 1,000,000,000 or whatever you like, but the idea is the same. No man can grasp the idea of 1,000,000 years, or $1,000,000, or 1,000,000 of anything. The figure is merely a symbol for a great quantity, whether it be years or gold pieces. The idea cannot be fixed. There will always be something that escapes. No millionaire knows exactly what he is worth at any given time, for there is always interest to be counted, and the value is a shifting one. It is so with immortality. Do not think of yourself as having lived 1,000,000 years or 1,000,000,000,000 years, but as truly immortal. without beginning or end. The man who knows himself to be rich is richer than the man who says that he has a certain amount of money, be the amount large or small. So rest in the consciousness of eternity and work in the consciousness of eternity. That is all for tonight.